Hello there, this is Rupert Watson from Jigsaw24. I'm Sales Director, and Chris Bailey here, who's our Head of Pre-Sales, who's going to walk us through how to basically put an OB truck in the cloud, which is not quite what we're going to do. What we're going to do is demonstrate that you can effect an awful lot of the kind of production activities that you would have done with an OB truck remotely, and either using an Ubuntu computer in a data center or on-premise, or indeed running in something like AWS or any of the other public clouds that are on offer. So essentially, we were just talking before we went live, just to explain, we're going to talk about this primarily in the context of NDI, and specifically around some tools that come from a company called Sienna, which is, a product called Sienna, which comes from a company called Gallery, who are based in the UK, and they've been innovating and developing products with whom we've been working for many long years. We've done all sorts of projects with them, which have included BBC London, and recently they did a very large installation for the NFL draft, which was delivered entirely remotely by ESPN, I think it was, in the States. And in fact, some of their technology is currently bringing the recently elected President of the United States to a grateful nation. As well as we've just recently been supporting the Associated Press to deliver all of the results from the American election. So there's a very diverse tool set, but we're going to focus in today on specifically what we've used recently to deliver projects with the BBC, like Springwatch, and indeed I think they're currently delivering Autumn Watch using it too, and effectively what we're going to do is walk through a very straightforward, kind of relatively linear narrative as to how you would acquire content, process it, manipulate it, and deliver it using tools that are entirely NDI, SRT, and other technology based, and with an emphasis on operating it remotely and indeed acquiring it remotely. So with that, Chris, do you want to share your screen, mate? Yep. And we'll show you what the tool set looks like in the back end. So this is running on an Ubuntu 18.04 box in our data center.
So I'm just going to do just a quick overview of kind of what we're going to be looking at, and to try and make a little bit more sense in terms of what we're actually trying to achieve when you kind of think of an OB truck. So here's our kind of Sienna side of it, but we've also got stuff that we need to acquire the footage to it. We also need to distribute it. We need to monitor it. We also need to add anything else. We need to mix it, and we also need to be able to deliver it. So what we're going to be doing in this demonstration in a much kind of simpler environment but it's the same principle, is basically take something like SRT feeds up. So this could be from the camera backs of broadcast style cameras, or something like mobile phones over something like Larix Broadcaster, all of this over SRT or over RTMP. We can even take full multi-camera uplinks from NDI Cloud, so creating basically a virtual NDI Cloud environment around the world. Also, to incorporate some kind of live editing. Obviously, in an OB truck, you need to be able to deliver highlights or some kind of VT playback. You also need to do some kind of vision mixing and some kind of audio mixing, and also bring audio into the system. Also some kind of commentary as well. So if you've got multi-language commentary, or you've just got single language commentary, but people cannot be on site at the same time, then you can send stuff in remotely and engage with the system. And also in terms of kind of delivery, whether you're streaming out to CDNs via RTMP or HLS, or whether you're sending it via UDP MPEG transport stream, or whether you're sending it back over SRT, we're able to do that. Now, I hope you see this. So this is basically the NDI processing engine, so made by Sienna Gallery. This is currently sitting in our data center about 40 miles away from me, and probably a heck of a lot further away from Rupert right now. So what we're going to be able to do on here is basically send some feeds into there, and then show you kind of the basic tool set around an OB truck and how we can manipulate these files. So effectively, this is running in a Ubuntu 18.04 server sitting in a data center. Again, this could be running in AWS. We've done multiple AWS installs in the cloud, also on Azure as well. So it's not platform specific, but again, you can have a mixture of on-prem and in the cloud for this, but we're going to concentrate on looking at the cloud. So basically, what is the NDI processing engine, and what is NDI? So NDI is basically a protocol designed by NewTek, which is basically video over IP. It's relatively lightweight. And what the NDI processing engine is able to do is able to process those NDI signals or any other signal which is coming into the system and allow you to manipulate it, process it, and deliver it out in different formats. So effectively, the NDI processing engine is a glue rack. It's basically a virtual glue. All of these tools come with the NDI processing engine plus module. So you have everything from, multi-viewer creation, SRT, input picture in pictures, downstream keyers, etc. All the stuff that you would kind of expect from a virtual glue rack. So what we're going to
So in
look.
essence, yeah, the design goal, I think, from an initial perspective, was to recreate the ProWell router and all of the bits and pieces that you'd normally find in a rack or in an OB truck. And in fact, explicitly, the guys have gone round a kind of OB truck with people like the BBC to work out, which components needed to be recreated in a sort of software environment like this.
Yep. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to need the first thing you think about OB trucks is we're going to need to get some kind of sources in here. So we're going to take in SRT. SRT seems to be the flavor of choice at the moment. Again, this could be RTMP or RTSP or some kind of transport stream coming into the system, or could be anything native NDI on the network, whether that's coming in through NDI Cloud or anything that's generating the NDI feed. So what we have here, so we have two SRT connections coming in.
Could be live view as well.
Yep. So we have Rupert's. This is actually Rupert's house. There's the cat doing something in the corner. And
hey, Chris, we're seeing the diagram at the minute, mate.
Oh, sorry. Oh, are you? Oh, sorry, my fault. Let me just share the right screen. I apologize for that. Let's just share my entire screen. There we go. So I hope you can see that now.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Okay, so we've got these are the virtual tool sets that I was mentioning earlier, which you couldn't see, so I apologize for that. So here we're going to be taking an SRT feed from Rupert's house in Norfolk, and I'm in Surrey. I'm going to take an SRT feed in from my camera. So what we have is this little kind of live viewer on each NDI module or NDI destination. That is the back of Rupert's house, and the cat is licking itself, and there's Rupert turning his camera around. So this is taking a native SRT feed straight into the system. Again, this could be RTMP or RTSP. And if we have a look at my camera on here, there's me. Obviously, we've got to get a little bit of SRT latency and going back through. So my picture quality is slightly worse than Rupert's. Effectively, what can we do with these systems then, and with these files? So with this file here, so with the actual live preview, what do we need to do? So we need to kind of process this video somehow. And what the next thing we think about when it comes to OB trucks is camera racking. So basically, we want to kind of add a proc amp or something to this system. I'm going to use mine because the color's awful on it currently. So what we can do is we can add a proc amp module in here, and we can just start to adjust the brightness down as well and bump the contrast a little bit. I'm looking a bit pasty, so we'll have a bit more of saturation on here. What you can see, I'm manually being able to do this from each feed. What I can also do on here is get a scope on as well and have a look at that. So let's have a look at an RGB parade of my signal. Let's have a quick look at that. So what we should be able to see is an RGB parade. So if I boost the brightness, etc., you should start to see this move
and
around.
each of these panels is available as a web browser to individual operators. So you could have a camera control operator working on his computer in the bedroom in Surbiton, whilst you've got someone else doing vision mixing in another environment, and yet another person doing audio. And they would all have their own effective frame, as we call them, which is essentially a different web browser image inside of Chrome. All controlling effectively the same computer, which is in our data center.
So now I'm going to control Rupert's and just dial that back a little bit. So that's all very well and good from a kind of simple standpoint like that. But what does it look like on a bigger scale? So if we have a look, so all these things are built around frames. So we can have these frames and everything is interoperable between each frame. So I've got a couple of sources on here that I can add into here. So if I have a look at my camera racking, now this might look a little bit more complicated, but effectively what I'm doing is the same thing, but I'm manipulating it a little bit more. So here I have 4 feeds coming in. So here you can see every NDI feed that's on my network. If I just grab that out, you can see everything that's NDI on my network or has been created into NDI. So this could be, if we have a look at Rupert, for instance, if we do a search for Rupert, that is the NDI destination made from Rupert's SRT feed. What we've got is a couple of clips going on here, some real-time clips. And then what we're adding to these is a proc amp
So
Got a
where are
scope
those
on.
coming from, Chris?
So these are currently coming from an NC1IO being up, which is sitting in our office in Golden Square in London, and then being uploaded to the cloud via NDI Cloud. So we're going to take this into a proc amp, and then we're going to add a scope to it. So we should be able to see the scope. But also what we're going to do is start creating a couple of scenarios based on around what the camera racker would really kind of want to see. So we're adding a picture in here. So we've got a clean feed. Well, like I say, a clean feed, but the feed that's been color corrected or racked, and then one with a scope on it. So here we go. We have a clean feed and then one with a scope on it, which should be pop up in a little histogram or a RGB parade in the top right hand corner. Now we have multiple sources coming in here, so I've got 4 made, and I'm doing the same thing, basically recreating each picture in picture for each. Now what does that allow us to do? So that allows us to start creating multi-viewers, which is useful for the camera racker. Whoops. If I just select the right feed here. So if we go down here, what we've got is we're taking these NDI destinations, which are coming from the scopes, and creating a multi-viewer. Now what you'll see is each side of the multi-viewer has each camera, and with a multi-view source and a RGB parade in the corner. Now this is able to use over something we'll get into a minute called Sienna Link, which is the low latency monitoring version of this. Again, this is all accessible, as Rupert said, via an HTML web page. Exactly, so you could view it like this, or you could view it via Sienna Link. So the next part of this is kind of how do we kind of start manipulating stuff as well. So we've got our camera feeds coming in here. So here are our clean camera feeds. All coming into basically a basic vision mixer with inside of Gallery. You can use something like vMix or TriCast or anything else that's on the network, because this will be outputting native NDI. So you can use other vision mixing tools. You could use Wirecast, for instance, or something like that. So what we're doing here is we've got a full
or VisVector
or VisVector, yeah. So I'm just going to pull this out slightly so you can see the little viewer, trying to fit it all on one screen. So here's our multi-viewer output from our gallery. And what we're doing is we're creating a clean output, preview output, program output, a multi-viewer output, and a couple of mixed minuses that are coming from our control room. So also what we have on here is some graphics coming in from Singular Live as well. Here you can see this is coming in of our graphics key. So what we've got is a full remote controllable vision mixer effectively. So if I can start flicking between the buttons on here, I'm controlling this. You see how quick the reaction time is. I can go to black. I can start adding stuff into preview window, or leave the ident on. Now what this allows us also to do, if you watch the top right hand corner here, I can actually
do a dissolve between two?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So we can do auto slow or auto fast. So there's a dissolve, a slow fast, or a fast one, or we can just set it to basic cut. We can also mix in or any graphics that's coming into the system. If we just have a look instead at the actual program feed that's coming out, what we should be able to see is now I'm controlling the vision mixer. I can blend those in and out as needed. I'm also controlling this via a product called Singular Live, which is basically a graphics package in the cloud.
And just to remind you, this could be someone on a laptop in a kitchen in Surbiton doing this bit.
Absolutely. So if I'm controlling this, I can start bringing the lower match up, and you'll start to see the actual animations that are built in. You see there, I'm trying to beat Rupert at this game of basketball. I'm failing, but the principle is basically taking an HTML5 output and adding it to the NDI processing engine via that HTML5 output, which gives
us just to
output.
explain, Singular is a system runs in a separate web browser, which you can create graphics and interact with databases and all that sort of thing that you'd expect to get from a VisRT feed. But it's all drivable on a subscription basis in a web page, and that web page will generate an HTML5 link, and we take that, take that link into the module in the NDI processing engine, and magically those graphics come from effectively what you and I would see as a web page. So that technology is available within this.
So what you can see is, and also the next thing about an OB track is actually applying some kind of branding onto it as well. You see we've got a little Jigsaw 24 bug up there on the right hand corner. That's just basically adding a bug inserter with a mat and a PNG. But this has the ability to add lots of downstream keyers, etc., into the multi-viewers or out into the system. So you have a full set of glue rack tools in here for manipulating any feeds that are coming in. So how would that work in terms of contribution? So of course you're going to want to get some kind of contribution contribution into the system, whether it be audio or whether it be video or both. So in terms of kind of sports, as we're on sports forum currently, this would be a good example to where you have kind of potentially multiple commentary coming in over on a single feed. So how we can do that is using something called Mumble. So Mumble is an open source system. So as you can see here, I have 3 Mumble link systems, one in English, one in German, and one in French. And on my Mumble system, you can see Chris here. I am actually into this English system, I'm into that channel. So anything that I commentate on, so I'll be using a proper, let's say a proper Coles Lit mic with a proper audio interface into my MacBook, for instance. I'll be getting a real-time preview with a mix minus back to me from the contribution manager, which I'll show you shortly.
Although if you want to, you can run the Mumble application on an iPhone and do
Yep.
the recording into an iPhone, and that will transmit it, directly back. But but you can also get talk back through the Mumble app, so you can
Absolutely.
talk to a journalist or a contributor's earpiece through Mumble, but also record their commentary from a remote location using an iPhone if you needed.
Absolutely. So anyone who's in one of these channels will be able to be contributing on each channel feed. But how does that work in principle in terms of actually controlling those? So we also have the ability to add something called a contribution manager in here as well. So again, this may look a little bit confusing at the beginning. So what we've got is basically a feed. So this is Rupert coming in on his feed. This is me coming in on my camera feed. Oh, I think my camera switched itself off. Fantastic. And then what we're actually feeding it is non-source hold. So if I have a look at the contribution return, this is basically what the contributor is getting via their low latency monitoring feed. So if I add a contribution manager into here, you can see the second I hit Rupert live, this is what he's going to get. He's going to get a live bug across his program, and he's going to get a mix minus back. When I come off that, I'm going to be getting a full program mix back without mix minus, but so I'm able to follow along. I'm also able to talk to Rupert on the intercom and say, hey, be a bit funnier, or, stop swearing, for instance. And then I can say, right, you're live again. And then when that contribution feed comes out of here into contribution, I can actually put a failover switch on it as well. So let's have a look at the failover. So here's Rupert. He's actually live currently. If I take Rupert off, he will automatically switch to a failover source. So if you're taking remote contributors in and they do lose the source automatically, then you can see how quick the failover is. It will automatically give you this can take you to a video file. It can take you to a completely different video source. It could take you to a bug or a PNG, or even a technical holding screen or bars, etc.
So just to be clear, to this is effectively a monitoring application.
Yes.
So you run it on you can run it on a phone, an iPad, a MacBook, a Windows computer, or indeed on an Apple TV 4K. They'll all run the application, and that receives a very, very low latency SRT stream essentially from the NDI processing engine as their kind of monitoring viewer, so they can see what's going on. That isn't the live output. No. It's whatever we choose to send that person. And indeed, we can talk about routing.
Yes, Chris, this is exactly what I'm going to do now. Yeah. So what you're looking at here in these little web pop-ups is a real-time proxy, effectively. So these are quite low quality, as you can see.
They're really for the admins to be able to see what's going on in the web GUI. But if you needed a real live viewer, you'd be seeing it on your Sienna Link.
Yeah, what I'm looking at here is the Sienna Link app. So effectively what I'm doing, so under my monitoring output on here, again, it's going to be hard to kind of fit all this in one screen, but again, this will be full screen and this will be higher quality as well and super low latency as well. I'll try and keep this all on the same screen for you. So what I'm currently looking at, here's my Sienna Link.
The quad split bars is effectively a separate application, which is what you would run on a laptop separate or an iPad near you, so you could see what you needed to see to help you do your bit of the.
So here we go. So here's my Sienna Link output, basically, which is effectively a proprietary SRT. It can be as low as 4 to 5 frames of latency, which is very good. I can basically put an IP whitelist and a stream key and encrypt the stream. At the moment, this is just a demo. At the moment, I can see it's just me connected to it. And I can also do a shared encoder, which means basically multiple people can the same feed, but it will also take up whoever is got the worst bandwidth will kind of affect everybody, but this is a way of kind of keeping the CPU usage down. So how does this work? So here we go. What I'm actually going to look at, instead of, I can take an NDI source, for instance. Let's have a look at this. It'll probably be Big Buck Bunny or something like that. Yeah, what a surprise. But that's just kind of an NDI source natively on a network playing that out. I can just take a look at Rupert's feed. out. My camera's shut itself off, but I think yours has as well. Oh no, there's Rupert's room. So this is basically now showing a real-time Sienna Link feed of whatever we choose. Now that's all very well and good, but also can be a little bit kind of finicky, I guess. So the best way to do this is add something called NDI router, which is a separate product made by Sienna, and it is literally the cherry on the cake of this. So if I choose an NDI router output, what I can do then is actually start routing via nice panels to it. So how does this work? So this is the NDI router. I can have basically configure any source that's on my network. As you can see, we've got quite a lot of sources, and I can also add destinations in here as well. So on my destinations management here, you can see my J24, and I have a couple of MVs on there as well, which I'll get into in a minute, which is where this gets really powerful. What I can do is also create custom panels as well for each user. So if I've got 30 different users and you've got 400 feeds, you don't want everybody to potentially have access to all those feeds, or maybe they don't even need to. So what we can do is we can actually say, right, this is going to be your view and this is your panel, so you can switch your own feed without having to kind of delve into the system. So what I'm going to do here, as I was set to the J24 output on the router, I can go into something like an XY matrix, for instance, and I can say, here's my J24 output, which should be my bars. And what I can say is, okay, I want the actual clean feed from the camera. And it's an absolute clean feed on there. And now I'm able to view that. And what I'm using is Sienna Link, and I can add that. So where this gets really even more powerful is when you start using multi-viewers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to custom. Here we go. So what we should have now on my Sienna Link output is 4 sets of bars basically on a custom-made multi-viewer. On the panel controller now, I've actually configured a panel so I can have multiple different sources, but I've also got multiple different outputs. So I can control all 4 of these outputs. So let's have a look at what this actual panel looks like. So here we go. So now I can see, here's my top left of my multi-viewer, here's my top right, bottom left, bottom
And
right.
again, just to reiterate, Chris, to be boring, this is a
Yep.
person on a laptop or a computer remote from us, a long way away potentially, and they've got this little custom panel, and they've got their Sienna Link app on their iPad, and so they can now choose what they get to see on the Sienna Link app.
Yep. So currently we're just pointing bars at it at the moment. So if I just say, okay, on the top left, I want to have a look at the clean feed coming from the camera. On the camera, I want to have a look at the one with the scopes on it. Fantastic, nice and easy. What if I want on the top right, I want to look at camera 2's with the scope feed on it. What if I want to have a look at 3 and say, okay, what's going on the live play out at the moment? I can do that. Where it gets even more powerful, so I can start adding multi-viewers within inside of multi-viewers. So if you do have, here we go, so here's another one. So here's all the scopes together on one multi-viewer, but again, I can add, okay, so I want to get a closer look at this one. You can also add a full screen output. So if you do have access to change to a different scene, I can change the J24 output as well to look at a different feed altogether. So the routing capability of this is super powerful. And just to mention that this can be a 4,000 by 4,000 square router, sorry, 4,000 square router, which is bonkers when you think it kind of traditional SDI style. That would be an absolutely enormous router, but this thing will just
essentially
kind of swallow it up.
And it's limited by the processing power of the machine running underneath it. So when we run it in Amazon, we run it on, or can run it on, very, very large computers, and it will scale across in a horizontal manner. So if you need more power than a single instance can handle, we just run it on multiple instances, and it all comes.
Yep. So there is a multitude of tools in here that allow you
Chris,
to
you've
basically
got 5 minutes, mate.
5. Okay, cool. There is a multitude of tools in this system that allows us to basically manipulate any of these feeds at all. So again, from taking in graphics to contribution, we can even take in AES67 audio.
Can we hit recording and editing on?
Yeah, absolutely.
Editing.
Yep.
Whilst record in the cloud.
Yeah, if we have a look at our gallery, for instance, here, you'll see on this system, we're actually looking at an Edit Premiere Pro system, which I'm actually running over Teradici currently. Oops. Log in.
Got your alias.
Yeah. So what this Premiere Pro system is doing. So as we've been talking, I've actually been recording this as well. So what we should be able to see, hopefully, if I can squeeze these all together. Again, real estate is a hard thing to come by at the moment. So what you can see, let's have a look at our multi-viewer output from our gallery. And down here, you can see there's our Premiere Pro output. As I scrub along the timeline, you can see how instant it is. This is basically the real-time output from the editing system. So what I've got is basically there's quite a few different recorders in here. So you've got native NDI recorders, compliance recorders, MXF recorders, XD cam recorders, ProRes recorders. So basically the world is your oyster have come into when it comes to recording the ISOs or recording the clean feed. I'm currently recording the clean feed. As you can see, I don't have the Jigsaw 24 bug up there. So anything that I do put back on the system doesn't have, when I'm playing back, doesn't have a duplication of anything. Again, this file will grow automatically. You'd edit it while it grows, obviously depending on what your settings in Premiere is set to. So if your settings are set to 60 seconds,
So
it
we've
does
got,
by default.
essentially here we've got the NDI's processing engine. It's got
Yep.
various recorders recording the output onto a shared S3
Yep.
or EBS storage in the cloud, which is being effectively consumed by the Premiere as a file off that same storage, and then is available to the editorial team to work with as it's still being recorded by the NDI
Yep.
processing engine's recorders.
Okay, and I can put it into live, hit VT, and hit go. Again, this could be any player at all. So now that Premiere Pro is now controlling whatever is going out onto the program feed. As you see, I can scrub it along and you can see how kind of instant the feedback is on it.
And obviously you can imagine we can expand this out. We can start to run Vantage encoders in their various Dockers as well. So we can build pretty much everything. We also do brain upgrades, so you can catch up with Chris.
Yep. So yeah, when it comes to taking any other kind of sources, again, the options are there's support for WebRTC in here as well. There's RIST support, so HLS support, SRT, RTMP, RTSP, the usual. Pretty much most network protocols allow you to get in here. We also have.
You can hook in various hardware controllers via MIDI and other APIs.
Yep, so you control the vision mixer via and the audio mixer via Behringer X Touch or Elgato. You can control the router via Elgato Stream Deck, which is a really elegant way of doing it to kind of give you that kind of proper hands-on feel of it.
Stream Deck.
Yep.
And also there's a full RESTful API, so we can, and indeed if you want to, you can develop your own modules if the spirit moves you.
Yep.
If there aren't enough, if 129 aren't enough. And just a quick mention, my favorite module, there's a very clever little module which allows you, if you've got journalists who struggle, you can effectively have an app on their phone that generates you generate a QR code on their phone, and when they show that QR code to the camera that's attached to the system, it will automatically put the NDI processing engine's one of the recorders into record and apply the metadata that is contained in the QR code. So you can effectively trigger record by showing a QR code to a camera at some remote location, which is kind of cool.
Yep, another smart, amazing stuff that it can do is a kind of full AI mix in here, which will allow you to almost works like Zoom. So if you've got multiple contributors, it will take the threshold of the voice and automatically switch feeds for you if you wanted a conversation bit. So it's like an auto mix, basically. You can take in AES67 sources from Dante if you want. So if you've got something like a SQ5 or something, or a proper mixer on site with all the audio coming into it, you can send it over that. You can even take the feeds over into an audio DAW like Reaper. For instance, there's a Reaper IO function on here which allows you to do a full kind of
and to finish, Chris, could you just quickly come through the export? How can you output? You can obviously output SRT.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is.
Yep, so we've got delivery. So here we go. You could take the same source connector. We could stream up to YouTube. We could stream for an RTMP streamer. We can send it over an SRT transmit. We can do the MXF record. We can do HLS, and we could do a UDP streamer. So that should be connected into my stream in a second.
Also land it on various tools, whether it be source output or NDI, NC1IO, to turn it back into baseband at the point of consumption.
Absolutely. So yeah, as I said, if you're working with something like TriCaster or anything that is converting, or even like Bird Dog or KiloView or Magewell, anything that's taking NDI native and converting it back to SDI, you can do that.
Gallery. I think that's us, Chris, mate. I'm afraid.
Right.
So just to there's a quick question from the audience, which I'll quickly cover, which is that was saying, will this replace outside broadcast within 5 years? I mean, it already has today in certain situations, but it's not obviously the answer for every scenario. But it is a quick flash of what technology offers now, and obviously we're working with various customers consistently to develop and expand the functionality. So do get in touch if any of this has tickled your kind of innovative funny bone. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.